Welcome back to Slasher. Today we're going to be looking at r/AskReddit. Teachers of Reddit, what was the worst lateness excuse you ever heard? When I was in college, a kid showed up nearly an hour late to our final exam. His excuse? I was in jail until about 25 minutes ago. I work in South Korea and had a 5th grader say he was late because he caught a whale, which is a local euphemism for getting circumcised. Awesome. One of my teachers told me that a girl came in late and claimed there had been a bomb attack next door to her home and that the road was blocked. We live in Finland, so the story was an obvious lie, except it wasn't. There had been a bomb at the police station next to her home, the only of its kind in decades. I was the student. My boyfriend, now husband, and his dad had a collection of classic cars, Mustangs, Comets, Falcons. We drove a different one pretty much every day. They were in various stages of rebuild and had some kinks to work out. I came in half an hour late, covered in grease and sweat, and had to explain the car caught on fire. Don't ask me how. You can talk to him because he was completely unfazed as flames shot out of the top of the freaking motor. We pushed it from the red light. About that time, another student came in. K-Fig? What class is boyfriend in? His car is on fire in the parking lot. Wait, what? Wait, you guys just pushed you didn't bother calling the fire department? I mean, you didn't get a bucket of water or like a hose or something? I mean, I know the car is called a Comet, but it's not really supposed to catch on fire. Oy vey. Primary teacher here, teaching 11-year-olds. Kid comes in 30 minutes late because he was waiting for his LED shoes to finish charging. Turns out he was not lying and proceeds to moonwalk over to his chair with his shoes flashing. Couldn't even be mad about it. It was too cool/stupid at the same time. Me. Walks in an hour late when there was already a 90-minute delay for snow. Teacher. How can you be this late? Me. Well, you see, my garage door was literally frozen shut this morning, so I just kind of went back to sleep to give it time to thaw. Teacher. Well, all right then. Obligatory, not a teacher. But I had a friend who was late to first period Spanish class every day of senior year. One day, the teacher had enough and told him he was going to be marked as absent if he was late again. Lo and behold, he's abnormally late the next day, but almost kicks down the door with how excited he is about his excuse. He was rear-ended just outside of the school by the math teacher, who only hit my friend's car because he himself was rear-ended by another student at the same school. And if that situation wasn't enough, while the 3 drivers were exchanging info, someone waltzed up to the cars, hopped in the backmost one, and took off with it down the street. Needless to say, my friend wasn't marked absent that day. In high school, 2 girls asked to go to the bathroom at the beginning of drama class, which is a 45-minute class. The teacher let them go. They came back with 5 minutes left in class, holding McDonald's bags. The teacher cocked an eyebrow and asked what took them so long. One girl sighed and said, "There was just a really long line for the bathroom." I mean, that's not really an inaccurate way of describing McDonald's. Not sure if this applies, but a teacher was telling us about how important it was to hand in our essays until the end of the week. We had to hand 2 essays per week. While she was talking about how she wouldn't accept tardiness, there was this only one exception when she accepted it on the following week. Turns out a student was mugged on his way to school. He ended up losing his backpack with everything inside, including the essays, phone, wallet, socks, and shoes. The student ended up going to talk to the teacher barefoot and crying, telling her how he even tried to persuade the assailant to let him get the essays out of his backpack, but to no avail. A freshman girl with a junior brother was late. She said her brother was taking forever in the shower in the morning. I can't figure out why it takes him so long. He has short hair. What is he doing in there? He does this all the time. Office staff was cracking up when she left. Sorry I was late. It's just kind of the way I am. It will happen again. Hey man, I get it. Not me, but a teacher I knew. Had a high school freshman that was late because he forgot he had high school and went to his middle school. Kid actually sat in a class before realizing he was at the wrong school. He had the visitor's pass his middle school gave him as proof. Teacher kept the middle school visitor's pass as proof of that lateness story. Not a teacher, but once my classmate wrote, "My pigeon laid an egg," as an excuse on his late coming slip. I'm not doubting that this happened, but why would you, if you were gonna get a bird, why would you ever pick a pigeon? They are the crackheads of birds, not just birds, the entire animal kingdom. They are the crackheads of crackheads. Not a teacher, but my senior year of high school, I drove home on my lunch period because I left my homework on my desk at home. Halfway home, the elderly man in front of me veered off the road and drove into a telephone pole. I stopped to make sure he was okay and for police to show up. He wanted me to help push his car off to the side of the road, but couldn't understand that his axle was snapped in two and buried about 4 inches into the pavement. I overheard the conversation with the police, and he was definitely on some medication and should not have been driving. My teacher was cool about it and actually let me grab lunch from the cafeteria and eat in class too, since I was going to grab lunch on the way back, but couldn't. Not a teacher, but a kid in class walked in late to my English class in 8th grade. My teacher was really weird and would go on these rants about how space doesn't exist, reality is a figment of our imagination, and one person at Google is taking over the world by deciding what the results Google gives you are. This kid walks in and says, "I'm not late because time doesn't exist." He wasn't marked late. Years ago, I had a student come in who had missed the test the previous week. He said a while back he had been shot in the head and they were unable to remove the bullet. And the previous week, it had started shifting and he was in the hospital. Showed me the scans of his head and everything. Also, right now, another student's friend let me know that he is in jail for a few weeks and asked me if I could please not drop him as he wants to stay in the class. A teacher. There was a kid who was late pretty much every day. One day, I was late. And when I walked in, I said to the teacher, "Sorry, I'm being Mike for Halloween," so she let me slide. That being said, I was like 3 minutes late. I doubt it was amusing enough to let me slide if I was 15 minutes late. I knew a guy in high school who came in 40 minutes late after lunch and said, "Sorry, I was at Subway and they got my sandwich wrong." There's one Subway in our school town, and it was about 30 minutes away at the other end of the high street. He was already 10 minutes late by the time he started walking back. My school starts as early as 7:30 for some students. By public transit, 70% of my school qualifies for free/reduced lunch. It can be upwards of 2 hours to get to school. Those students have pretty legitimate reasons for lateness. I had one student a few years ago come late because his father had been murdered a few days earlier. I didn't expect him to show up at all, but his mom wanted him to go back to school. He just didn't get there on time. I had another late because her family had been evicted. Her parents had to work, so she was figuring out where to store their stuff. I am a teacher. This year, I have a student who comes in halfway through the first period, literally every single day. I finally got on his case about why. I try not to pry, but my God. And he finally admitted that he didn't like waking up to an alarm, so he doesn't. He just eventually wakes up and comes to school. I was a TA, running twice weekly lab sessions in the evening. Being more than 10 minutes late to a lab usually earned a 0 grade for the day, so you usually needed a medical note or police report to get out of it. At the end of class, one student who was 20 minutes late came up to me and apologized profusely. He was a quiet, unassuming Chinese guy with glasses and a below-average grasp on the English language. He told me that while he was walking to class, a guy in front of him was shot multiple times by a man in a nearby parked car, which then sped off. He claimed that he rushed over to the man and attempted to attend to his wounds, along with another bystander, that he died before the ambulances arrived. My first thought was, that's ridiculous. But then I noticed his shirt, jeans, and forearms covered in blood. Before I had a chance to really say anything, he beelines it to the exit and leaves. A couple hours later, out of curiosity, I googled Toronto shooting death, and sure enough, there's a 14-minute-old article describing a fatal shooting that occurred earlier in that day, not terribly far from campus. The next day, I get an email from the course instructor, informing me that the student had submitted a police report to confirm his involvement in the incident. Motherfucker held a man in his arms as he died and still made the effort to come to class. I can't even imagine what the guy was going through, as he quietly sat in the back of that room. I would give a fellow student a ride to school every day in high school, and he was never awake when I pulled up to his house to pick him up. I felt bad that I was writing his name as my excuse for being late every day, and didn't want to embarrass him. I eventually resorted to absurd excuses that the office and principal seemed to understand as code for it being this kid's fault. Most of my excuses were something along the lines of UFO attack, grandma got run over by a reindeer, Bigfoot sighting, car was taken and had to wait for Liam Neeson to bring it back. Whatever I thought was funny each morning. Kid had a tough home life and principal agreed. If I could get him to school every day, it was okay if I was late. Not teacher, but student. Kid that was always f***ing around rolled into class 30 minutes late, totally disheveled. With wild eyes, he claimed he fell down the stairs and blacked out. Teacher didn't believe him, but that f***er was covered in dust all over his back, so who knows? My best excuse. I have poor time management. Teacher said that he was ready to yell at me for any excuse I had, but he had nothing for that. Got let off the hook.